This podcast will focus on Clark and Mayer's redundancy principle as discussed in Chapter 7 of E-Learning and the Science of Instruction, 4th edition. According to Clark and Mayer, the redundancy principle is that by presenting words and audio alone in a presentation, you avoid straining the channel of working memory. Clark and Mayer's Chapter 7 summarizes that when audio repeats text on screen, the content becomes redundant, and the text should not be added to printed graphics. By presenting words as audio alone, it avoids overloading the visual channel of working memory that is used to process the text and graphics. Clark and Mayer state that there are benefits to including audio and graphics without text, because on-screen text and pictures enter through the eyes and must be processed through the visual pictorial channel, whereas audio enters through the ears and is processed through the auditory verbal channel. So when graphics, text, and audio are together, the visual channel must process both pictures and text, whereas chances for overload are minimized when just narration and animation are present because they are being processed by two different cognitive channels. Therefore, the eyes only have to process the graphic, and the added audio will help enhance the understanding of the graphic. Another problem that's stated in Chapter 7 is that by including both text and narration, it could become extraneous cognitive processing, which means that the learner is trying to compare written words to the spoken word and therefore missing the message of the presentation. It becomes too much to process when a learner has to read and listen because the material is being repeated and not enhancing the presentation. Like this graphic on the screen, the viewer is looking at the computer screen as well as listening, and on the computer screen there are graphics and text. So they are reading and processing the pictures, but it is hard to understand because they're also trying to listen to the content from the narration. Here in Figure 7.1 from Chapter 7, the slide shows identical text and narration, as well as graphics of an Excel program. The information of the graphics and text need to be processed in the visual channel, which is through the eyes. The two orange ovals show how the audio is being narrated as the same text on the screen, therefore making the content redundant. This text could be eliminated to allow for focusing to be targeted on the Excel graphics. However, Clark and Mayer do state that there are some exceptions to the principle, and this is known as boundary conditions. This means that under certain conditions, text and audio are beneficial together. For example, if one listens to a podcast on a computer that does not include graphics, the spoken words to the ear and the written words to the eyes do not clash. Also, if a presentation is slower paced or learner paced, graphics and text could be together. Text and audio could be beneficial when an unfamiliar or technical words are being taught to a learner, especially with a foreign language. Lastly, if the presentation contains no pictures or there are less words in text than in audio, like this slide here. As a fourth grade teacher, this principle, the redundancy principle, is beneficial to presentations for my students. I use technology often in my lessons, and creating a presentation for my students to learn a skill and also to listen to something and apply it helps them grow as learners. I use this idea of the redundancy principle with my students when teaching how to use area models to multiply multi-digit numbers. By having less text on the screen and just a narration with graphics, it helped the students become more comfortable with the content, and also it's less daunting to have less words on the page for them, especially at the fourth grade level. Here is a slide that I started to use for the presentations, showing graphics and examples how to set up an area model, as well as dictate the steps to the students on calculating the product. Students were able to follow along and practice on their own. I started off by telling them how to create the area model by drawing a rectangle and dividing it into 2 rows and 2 columns. I then broke up each number by its value, and we were talking and using vocabulary. I reminded them that they were able to use their basic facts and strategies like that to calculate larger numbers. Using the arrow on the screen and the different colors were helpful to them, and it's something I could reference for the students. And they were able to walk through the graphics, and then I would proceed to walk them through the steps. Here, the slides continue. and now they're be able to build off their previous knowledge of arrays and basic math facts. Students were able to go through the pictorial presentation with the audio behind them. This slide is now showing them how they're using the partial products and adding them together to get their final product. The audio that is narrated along with the slide continues to give the step-by-step account of how to calculate the answer. Students do not need to read the steps, but just listen and follow along. So they can also go back if needed. Students were also able to do it on their papers and look at the pictorial images to help them get the steps. I believe if the steps were written on the slides in text, it would take away from the actual pictorial steps, and the students would not be able to fully comprehend the skill at hand. In summary, a presentation with no text but just graphics and audio is an equation for success and understanding. So Clark and Mayer may have stated that there might be some exceptions to the rule of the redundancy principle, but I believe that there is a connection to the modality principle in the book being discussed by eliminating extra content that is distracting to the heart of a presentation. So keeping it simple with graphics and narration to deliver the main idea is very helpful in getting your point across. References to Clark and Mayer's E-Learning and the Science of Instruction, Proven Guidelines for Consumers and Designers of Multimedia Learning, 4th edition, was used for this presentation.